everybody, and welcome back to Rosenthal Reviews. Today, it's a big one. We're talking about Captain America, Brave New World.
What the hell are you? We are FANDOM.
So on opening night, I did manage to go and see Captain America, Brave New World, and I was going to go by myself, but my mate felt so sorry for me that I was going alone on Valentine's Day that he tagged along. I did manage to get the Hulk popcorn bucket. It looks pretty cool, right? It only cost me 40 quid. Totally worth it. Oh yeah, be sure to stay to the end of the video, by the way. I'll include a little fun... There's still popcorn in there. Whoops. I'll include a fun little snippet with this guy in. Okay, so before we get into it, just to reassure you, this is a spoiler-free review. You can watch the entirety of this video and not worry about getting spoiled for Captain America Brave New World. Any references that I do make to any material in the film, you will have already seen in the trailers. So Captain America Brave New World sees Sam Wilson, played by Anthony Mackie, take over the role of Captain America. So in this film, Captain America finds himself in the midst of a global incident, and he needs to discover the mystery behind this plot before time runs out. So if you've had a browse of the online community, you'll know that this film is very much dividing Marvel fans. Right now, it does currently sit at 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. Always wondered if that sounds weird to Americans, Brits saying tomatoes, tomato, same thing, right? And I want to talk about this to start with because for me, I had fun with this movie, but a lot of people didn't. A lot of people are calling this film fine, medium. To quote Ted Mosby,
unrelated, do architects make big money?
Aggressively medium money.
Damn it.
So if you haven't seen How I Met Your Mother, a little bit of context for you. In this scene, Ted Mosby is describing how much money he makes, and he says aggressively medium. It's supposed to be a joke, fine. But this guy's an architect, and really, he does actually make quite a bit of money. And again, I give you this context because a lot of the community are calling this film fine, medium, average, and that's being painted as a bad thing when that's not necessarily the case. And I can't help but think that this is because a lot of the Marvel fandom have become slightly spoiled, myself included in that description. When we look back to the Infinity Saga, the quality of those movies was so high, so through the roof, that now when we actually get a pretty decent movie, we're all kind of let down by it. Over the years, we have come to expect the greatness of Infinity War, Endgame, Civil War, Winter Soldier. The list is endless. But not every film can be like that. Sure, this film had the potential to be great, but just because it isn't, doesn't automatically make this bad. Because for me, I had a good time with this movie. So let's start with the good here, because there is a good chunk of it, and let's begin with the legend himself, Harrison Ford. Not gonna lie, I was actually kind of worried about him being cast in this film. Recently, you can't help but feel he's potentially phoning it in a little, particularly when you look to the Star Wars sequel trilogy. But here, man, he brings it really well. And you know what? He's actually got a really good chunk of screen time. Like, sure, Captain America's your lead, he's your main presence, but very, very close behind him is Harrison Ford as Thunderbolt Ross. His story arc is probably the best in the movie, and I love the scenes with him that actually gave you the feels, sure. But just as good were those heavy, dramatic scenes like the one that you see in the trailer with himself arguing with Captain America, "You're not Steve Rogers." That one, brilliant. Now, if you've seen basically any kind of marketing material for this movie, you'll know that Thunderbolt Ross, Harrison Ford, also kind of plays another character. And alright, fine, he's not in the movie much. Don't go in expecting to see him in half an hour of this movie. But the stuff that he is in is really good. He has a great fight in the third act, really intense, really engaging. I loved it. Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson in this film, aka Captain America, he did a pretty good job. And you know what? It takes a lot for me to say that, because Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, he's my favourite character in the MCU. So seeing that shield transferred over, it was tricky for me, but Anthony Mackie does a great job. For me, where he excels are those more dramatic heavyweight scenes where he's questioning the morality of right and wrong, or he's doubting his abilities to be Captain America. When he leans into that, it's brilliant. The comedic stuff, alright, it's fine. There's a couple of funny one-liners, but in general, when he's leaning into that side of the character, I don't respond to it as much, and that does relate to a wider issue that I have with the Captain America character at the moment, and we'll touch on that later on in this video. And very quickly, while we're talking about performances, Carl Lumley as Isaiah, who you'll know from The Falcon and Winter Soldier, he was great. He did a fantastic job here. Another plus for this movie was actually the action. There's a good amount of it. 4 or 5 bigger set pieces that I counted with some others sprinkled in there. most of them were pretty good. I already mentioned the Red Hulk fight. That was brilliant. The choreography was great. Wasn't a massive fan of how that fight ended, but hey, what are you going to do? The other fight, which I absolutely loved, was the aerial battle, which again you see teased in the trailers. That was probably a close second for me. The action is good, yeah, but what makes this great is that it times very nicely with this building story element, which overall makes for a very engaging sequence. The rest of the action, yeah, sure, it's fine, but again, another spoiled MCU fan, comparing it to prior Captain America action sequences, it does come off as a little bit slow and clunky. Another thing that I quite enjoyed about this movie was the interconnective tissue to the wider MCU. For me, this is something that has been missing from Marvel movies for the past few years. And look, I don't need movies to be connected to a wider universe. But if you are going to sell films as a wider cinematic universe, a franchise, even a trilogy, have a plan, have it connect, and it just hasn't been doing that recently. However, here, it is starting to feel more like a universe again. You do get direct references to The Incredible Hulk, Age of Ultron, The Eternals, Falcon and Winter Soldier. I guess there is kind of a reference to Doomsday/Secret Wars in the post-credit scene right at the end of the film. It's not the best end credits scene, so I wouldn't blame you if you didn't stick around. All of that being said, this film does do a good job in reminding the viewer that there could potentially be wider implications to the events that happen in this movie. Beyond what I've already mentioned, the main problem I had with this movie was the writing. The overall mystery element of the second act was actually pretty engaging. The main villain of the film, who I won't get into for spoilers' sake, he is pulling the strings in the background to actually create some great payoffs. But as more and more is revealed, you do start to realize just kind of how simple and basic and sometimes, yes, lazy the writing is.
Well, that's just lazy writing.
And unfortunately, this does reflect in other areas of the writing. For example, the humor in this film, a lot of the time it does fall fairly flat. Now, it's no secret that our next Avengers film does somehow fall next summer, and despite not knowing much about it, I am very excited. And naturally, with some prior characters moving on from the universe, you do kind of look to Sam Wilson, aka Captain America, to lead the next Avengers. And based on this film, I can't help but feel that this guy isn't the person to do it. Right now, for me at least, he lacks the overall gravitas and I guess general indescribable aura that somebody like Steve Rogers had. And I guess the best example of this, really small, but it stuck with me after the film. There's a scene at the start of this movie where Cap and a couple of others are going to this event gathering kind of thing, and Cap is just kind of bigging it up quite a lot. Okay, sure, he's trying to inject some energy into the conversation that these characters are having, but I couldn't help but detect a note of pride there, and I couldn't help but think, should Captain America be doing this? And I just don't think that Steve Rogers would have done something like this as Captain America. He had that immovable moral compass that meant he only did the things that were best for other people. And I'm not saying Sam Wilson wouldn't do what's best for other people. Of course, he's that kind of character. But there was something about this for me where I was like, this isn't what Captain America is supposed to be. A very small example and a nitpick in a way, but for now, I'm not totally convinced that the mantle of Captain America can lead the next Avengers. However, as a film, this is pretty good. I had fun, and I think the casual movie and Marvel fan will too. Overall, on the Rosenthal Reviews ranking, I'm going to give Captain America Brave New World a 6.5 out of 10. On the entertainment echelon, it's an 8 out of 10. The action at times was pretty great, so I can only recommend that you go and see it on the big screen. And on the feeling factor, hope is too strong a word, but I'm feeling some intrigue as to where the MCU is going to go next. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on Captain America Brave New World. Certainly not the best MCU film, but definitely not the worst. And you know what? Based on the Rotten Tomatoes score, tomatoes, there you go, I said tomatoes, it's ranking in the bottom 3. I can count 10, maybe 15 at an absolute push Marvel movies that were worse than this one. So definitely go check it out for yourself. If you have seen the movie, let me know your thoughts. Were you disappointed? Were you pretty pleased? Whatever your thoughts, keep them spoiler free and put them in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching this review right until the very end. I do appreciate it. You can look forward to more videos coming your way very soon. But in the meantime, please subscribe for more reactions and reflections, and I'll speak to you all very soon.
Suspect spent £37 on a large popcorn and a Red Hulk.
I didn't!